Every episode celebrates original content written by real people who experience real emotions. I'm Rayanne Thorne-Kruger. Welcome to Real Words. I met my guest today, Yvonne Pepin-Wakefield, about 7 or 8 years ago when I was on a road trip. Anybody who knows me knows that I love to road trip and I often document it. And I was lucky enough to be stopping in the Dalles in Oregon. And Yvonne is a well-known artist and author. I was lucky enough to pick up one of her books while I was there. And I am so happy to have her as a guest here on the show. I think you're my first artist. So thank you, Yvonne, for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Can you give us just a brief overview of your career and where you are now?
Yeah, let's start where I am now, because when you saw me, I was in a different home and studio on the Columbia River. Since then, I sold that and I built a new multi-purpose building literally on the Columbia River in the Dalles, Oregon. So I live upstairs where I am now, and I have my studio and my gallery downstairs. So I live and work here. So I started in high school. I did not take a high school drawing class because it's where all the druggies, the dope heads, and the dumb kids hung out because they got easy credit. So I always did independent art on my own.
Okay.
Had a lot of time. I went to 3 different high schools in 3 different years because my parents died and I was like moved from foster home to foster home. So I always had these large chunks of time. And that's how I started my drawings, using these little people, these little round characters that always had like their heads cracked open and their hearts ripped out. It was a form of art therapy to help me deal with the grief from my parents' death. And when I went to community college, it said, you know, what does your major want to be? And I just like clicked off art because I'd always drawn. Didn't really ever consider it as a career. It was just something I did all the time. So I went from there, did community college, was given a scholarship to the Mendocino Fine Arts Center for 3 years in their art guild, which is really where I learned about art. I learned it from sage artists, people who grew up during the Depression, were in the, what it was, WPA, Works Progress Administration. They did a lot of work for them. They went to Prado, they went to Yada, they went to the Los Angeles School of the Arts. They taught me how to see. And after you learn how to see, you learn how to manipulate the media for your expression. So I had wonderful teachers in sculpture and painting, Miriam and Ray Rice, well known. And it was so much different than the high school or the college classes I took, because you were more like in this treadmill where you produced and you spit something out for a grade. And to me, the feeling wasn't there. So after that, I did pursue an associate's in art therapy, and I was about 4 credits away from getting the degree when I decided there was too much therapy and not enough art. So I quit that. And then I got a associate's in fine art and arts administration, which I helped use to support my art career. And then later on, I got a master's and a doctorate. And my doctorate studied drawing in communication with professional groups of people. So there was my instrument, that we had to solve a situation. People could use it. One group used it totally through drawing, totally nonverbal. The other group used drawing and verbal, and the other group solved it just verbally. So the data reflected that the middle group that used drawing and verbalization increased their abilities to communicate. And my doctoral dissertation actually had some of the first pictures in a doctoral dissertation.
Wow. Yvonne, thank you so much for your work. I can remember when we met, I think we met once. I got a tour of your studio, and then I came back to see you again, and you were actually doing art therapy. You had, I believe, a special needs student there with you. who was non-communicative, I believe, if I remember correctly. And she was an incredible artist.
Right. And
So,
I just celebrated her 21st birthday. We still work together twice a week. In fact, after this at 2 o'clock, I have a lesson. She went from being, I was teaching a ceramics class for kids, and she has facial, she looks different from the other kids.
okay,
And when she came in, all the other kids like wouldn't look at her. She
got it.
sat down, she put her head on the table. Um, she wouldn't do the work, but when I'd go away, I'd come back and she'd had created something. So
Wow.
every week for 2 weeks, we'd go outside and we'd have lunch or snacks, and the kids would be running around playing, and she'd sit in a corner on the steps, and I'd sit right next to her, and I just babbled, blah 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 blah. And one day she came up and she just nudged me a little bit, and I knew there was something in there. So a few months later, her mother brought her to my studio and said she wants to work with you, and we've been working together for over 10 years
Wow.
now. She's had several major art exhibitions. She's got her own little printing press. She is the youngest participant on the Gorge Artist Open Studio Tour, which is this huge studio tour event. In this year, it'll be May 2nd, I think, from up both sides of the Columbia River in Washington and Oregon. So yeah, it's a good success story.
Wow, that's incredible, and it speaks to the value of the work that you do. And so
Well,
again,
drawing was
thank you.
her voice. That's the voice. She had that voice in her, but she couldn't get it out. So as a mentor, I'm helping her with that visual language.
So this speaks to what I want to celebrate with Real Words with this project is the value of creating individually, right? The value of each of us pulling from within us, using our emotion, our experiences, our humanness to create. And when I first started thinking about the project, it was basically just focusing on writing. And you were on my list to contact with on ask you to participate because you are a writer too. So how did you decide I'm going to write also on top of doing all of this work with art, giving back the teaching that you do? Um, your book here, Suitcase Filled with Nails, speaks to your experience teaching art in Kuwait. Is that, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, and you have a first edition that's been republished since then.
Okay, I do. Well, I'm lucky. I'm going to keep my first edition. So, how did you decide to write? What allowed you to feel like I can express myself in this way as well?
I think I needed a friend, and this is how it came about. When I was 18, I bought 80 acres in the Oregon wilderness and built this log cabin and lived there alone. And it's off the grid before that term was popularized. There's no electricity. You still get the water from the creek with buckets. I write by kerosene lamplight. And I was just there this weekend doing the same thing.
Wow.
But I would keep a journal in building the cabin. And then after I moved into the cabin, then I had time to reflect on the emotions behind building and the emotions that actually led me to go to the wilderness. So I put them together and created a book. The first one, this is the second version of it, Babe in the Woods,
Okay.
Building a
Babe in the
Life
Woods.
One Log at a Time, talks about developing myself and my ability to use tools. And then I'll just quick go down the succession. So also based on those journals, I took this one, Babe in the Woods Self-Portrait, which is book 2. And
Yeah.
this is about when I'm in my early 20s and I'm developing as an artist, as a writer up in the wilderness. And I reflect on that. Again, I use the journals for that. And then Babe in the Woods, Path of Totality.
Yvonne, you've frozen. Can you move your cursor? Shoot. Darn it.
Up from
There you are.
me
There you are.
starting the cabin. I'm back.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. We froze a little bit. You're good.
Okay, so Baby in the Woods self-portrait takes you up to today. And actually, I'm working on a fourth book called Babe Out of the Woods, because writing these Babe in the Woods books was my comfort zone. I know what I'm writing about. So, they always say, write about what you know. So with Babe in the Woods, Babe Out of the Woods, I'm talking about things I normally don't talk about, but I'm relating it then again back to the log cabin and what it's like to live independently and alone.
So with it's just fascinating to me that, being a young person losing your parents, finding yourself through art, through writing. What what was it that allowed you to believe you could do this? What do you think it was? Did you draw back on something that you learned from your parents? Was it just tenacity? Do you think you were born with this ability to just keep going forward, keep creating?
I think it was naivete. I had no idea what I was getting into, because like I was up there last weekend and going, wow, I did that when I was 18. How did I ever do that?
Right.
You don't think there's going to be consequences because you've never done it before.
Right.
So I think that was part of it. And wanting a home, I needed to build a home. Yeah, I could have bought a double wide somewhere, but I just knew in my soul I needed to be in the wilderness. And while I was there, I needed a home. And so that's what I did. The experience of the building taught me perseverance, and that you do not have immediate success. You might try and attempt at something 2 and 3 or 4 times before you get it right. And it's a philosophy that I still use in my life. When I get frustrated at something, I go, okay, well, it's not working from that angle. Let's approach it from another angle.
Right.
And also quality. So, for instance, if I was slipshod on laying the roof or any part of the foundation, I would have to clean up that mess later on. So it's the same thing with me now. When I do something, whether it's a personal relationship, whether it's a product, it's got to be the quality that I will know that will stand the test of time.
Just incredible stories that you have to tell. How has travel impacted your creativity?
Travel. The biggest part was when I went to Kuwait in the Middle East. I was art professor there for 6 years, and I'm basically a landscape painter. I'm an emotive painter. If I don't feel it, I don't paint it. That's why you'll never see me painting portraits. I only do still lifes to show students. So when I get to Kuwait, there's basically no landscape. It's, I think, the only place in the world that doesn't have fresh water. And it was 100 degrees. It was too dangerous to be out anyway. So one day at one of the souks, I saw these souks are the community markets, big city markets. I saw pomegranates, like apples here. Pomegranates are all over. So I got a case of pomegranates, cracked one open, and I started painting pomegranates. And for 6 years, I painted paintings of pomegranates. And it expresses, my frustration, my joy, all the emotions I had at being in Kuwait. So in 6 years, I had 2 major exhibits of the pomegranates there, my pomegranate paintings. And I also did a research, pomegranates in the arts and culture of the Middle East, which is for me fascinating because I interviewed 40 people from all over the Middle East region about their association with pomegranates. And then based on the interview, I took the imagery that came to me and would paint a painting of it. And so this is the funny part. So then I rank ordered the responses, and the number 1 response was eating, culinary. Number 2 was sexual, and number 3 was medicinal. So I painted those themes, and I painted, so they'd tell me these songs and poems like her breasts are like pomegranates or her lips are as bright as pomegranates. So I painted this big painting with this woman with these big pomegranate breasts. And I went, I can't show this. I can't exhibit this. I'll just ship it home because I had another exhibit of pomegranates backstage. And I went, I don't even think this will go through customs. So I had to totally whitewash it out. So that was an
Oh, no.
interesting thing about painting uh, under very cautiously.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to talk about the pomegranates. I'm going to show the image that I put together to promote the show shows you and behind you here is um, one of your paintings of pomegranates. And I want to talk about when I met you and you showed me these paintings. I walked into your studio, different studio than you have now, but I walked into your studio and they lined one whole wall. I think you were actually working on one at the time. And I had just gone through a devastating divorce when I met you, like within a year before I met you. And I saw them as my heart ripping open when I saw your paintings. So it's so interesting that the feedback that you got from your initial research on what the pomegranate stood for or what it meant to people was so different than how it impacted me, how your art impacted me. And I even said I have to come and learn how to paint these because I feel like my heart has been ripped open when I see these pomegranates ripped open, right? It was for me it was uh, clearly displayed pain for me. So how did the pomegranate for you, what does the pomegranate mean for you in your continual production?
Well, for me, it's expression. I actually got through my husband's death with another series of pomegranate paintings. That's what moved me through. It's a nonverbal emotional release that I don't get with anything else. But let me give you this idea, this circumstance that happened. I had a major exhibition at Yakima Valley Community College with about 80 of my pomegranate paintings. And there was one I did when I was in Kuwait. My brother committed suicide. He blew himself up. And I learned about that in Kuwait. And that night, I painted this pomegranate that just expressed everything. So this was up in a gallery. One of the people who came in had never been in a gallery before. She saw that painting. She walked over and she started crying. And later we
That's
were
what I
talking.
did.
So we were doing an interview with her later, and she almost her son almost burned to death in a house fire, and that's what that painting that's what it invoked in her, was her son almost getting burned to death in the house fire. So that translation between my blow up, she picked up on that. Was this, I don't want to say universal language, but it was a language of exchange that involved, color, form,
I
and
felt
produced an emotion.
I felt the same. I mean, I'm getting emotional thinking about it because I felt that same thing when I saw your paintings. I could feel the heartbreak and it touched my own personal heartbreak, right, that I was experiencing, that I was trying to recover from. So thank you for I feel like I'm thanking you this whole interview, but I thank you for showcasing that and exhibiting that humanness in by using an object or a landscape, let's call it a pomegranate landscape, to express that emotion. Which leads me to the question that I have for you regarding AI. One of the reasons that I launched this series, the Real Words series and project, is that I want to continually, for the foreseeable future, celebrate creativity by humans that experience emotion, by humans that survive things like you have survived, like I've survived, like most humans survive tragedy, heartbreak, joy, sorrow, pain, happiness, all of the things that we survive and thrive in. Do you think that with the onset of AI and it's rapidly being incorporated into almost every aspect of our lives, when you think about it, do you believe or feel like creativity is at risk because of the development of AI?
Just to backtrack, I do not use any photographs in my work. I only paint from life. And it gives me and it gives my work this freshness that you don't see in works that use photographs. Because sometimes you go into an exhibit and it's almost pedestrian. I've seen this before, but it's in a
Right,
different
right,
form.
right.
Um, I personally stay away anything with AI. If I hear it on television, I put the mute button. I'm opposed to it in the arts. I mean, in my art, other people's arts, they can utilize it the way that they feel they can responsibly. But for me, it feels, it's too foreign, it's too unreal, it's too unnatural.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have a similar response that you do. If I'm scrolling on my phone, like if I'm on social media and I hear that AI generated voice, I mean, there are 4 or 5 different types of AI generated voice. I instantly mute it. Or if I hear it in the other room, like my husband's watching something, I mute it because I don't want to hear it. I feel similarly to you. I know that it has its place. I understand that. I understand that it's been incorporated into our life already just by simply how when we Google things, that's AI aggregating information for us. So I know that it's not going away, but I also feel that, and I don't use it when I write. I don't use it when I create art, and I hope that we still hang on to those really important parts of creativity
Well,
that we
and
don't
I was
lose it.
thinking about that the other day. I selectively teach kids from very different walks of life. And I was going, well, I'm never going to be the Rembrandt. I'm never going to be the Michelangelo. But you know what? I have the ability to teach these kids to see. And to me, that's an art form. And we
It is.
use no electronics media. We don't use our phones for reference. It's all observation.
Right,
And they're not going to get they're not getting that anymore.
right. My guest today is Yvonne Pepin-Wakefield. Yvonne is an artist, incredible artist. She's a writer. She's written several books, and she is also a teacher. You can view her work at YvonnePepinWakefield.com. We'll also share some links to her books. Can we order your books on your website? I believe we can.
No, you can order them anywhere but my website. You can buy them
Okay.
at bookstores,
Okay.
anywhere books are sold.
Okay.
And I also have a YouTube channel where I read from one chapter each week from my
Oh, I
book. We're
love that.
still on the first book, and that's just Yvonne Wakefield YouTube channel.
Okay. Great. We'll add that link here. Before we get away, and thank you so much for joining me today, I would love for you to share any advice you might have for a new writer or a new artist.
Well, let's start with the writing. The writing you're doing right now is going to be the best time you've had with that writing. It's afterwards, if you want to publish it, is where things fall apart. And it's frustrating to be rejected and be rejected and be rejected because it makes you feel like, oh, my work isn't that good. It's not, normally it's not that way. It's the market is saturated.
Right.
So just as a writer, believe in yourself, learn to love rejection or learn to laugh it off, but keep persevering. You know, you might find that pearl in one of the oysters. As for art, I would just say pursue what you want to do, not what people think you should do, and do it daily. I always keep a little sketchbook wherever I am. I keep one in my purse. So if I go to meetings, I'm always sketching things. For me, it's also a way to focus. Like if you're in a boring meeting, I'm multitasking, but I'm doing it directly in a sketchbook.
Awesome. And any resources you can share? Do you have anything that I know that you are a perpetual student yourself? So any resources you can share?
Uh, Go to the library and check out art books and just see the variety of art. The Artist magazine, which comes out monthly, your library will get it. You can also subscribe to it. It's nice because it shows techniques and it shows
Oh, okay.
other people's artwork. And maybe you, like, I was looking at one from 1974 up at the cabin this weekend that somebody had just given me, and I was trying to figure out how to get the exact color of these in the painted hills of this ochre color, and no matter what I did, I couldn't figure it out. Well, it showed me their palette, so that was interesting. So then I just add a little bit of manganese violet to my ochre, and I got the color.
Wow.
So, and I thought I knew everything before.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and visit here on Real Words, Yvonne. I continue to learn from you. Thank you for sharing your art. I know that sometimes art and writing can be really personal and expository of past experience. And it's clear to me that emotion and a real human being is imperative in order for us to share art. It's clear to me that that's
Yeah.
a driver for it. And I will never forget that first time I saw one of your pomegranate paintings and what it did to my heart, to my soul. So it was gut wrenching, but at the same time healing, because it made me feel like I wasn't alone, that we all as humans experience pain, and pain is part of the challenge of being a human being, and that's how we grow, that's how we shift, that's how we help others. So thank you.
Well, I hope you can come to my new studio
I know
gallery.
I need to get up there. I need to do another road trip, and I need to get up there and check out your new studio. My guest today has been Yvonne Pepin-Wakefield. Yvonne, thank you for joining me
Hey,
today.
thank you.
And you can find Yvonne on her website, YvonnePepinWakefield.com, and also her YouTube channel, Yvonne Wakefield. Thanks for tuning in. This episode was made possible by Never Enough Media.